Hello class and welcome to this Probotector walkthrough right here on Video Games 101 by way of Let's Play with Brigands. I'm your instructor, Professor Brigands, although this time, strictly speaking, walkthrough probably isn't the apt term. This is because, as some of you know, or will instantly gather, Probotector is a European region-specific sprite swap of 1988's NES title Contra, which we've already done a class on. As such, I'm going to once again give it the same difficulty rating we handed out in Contra in that class, which in itself came with an asterisk. As mentioned in that class with the spread gun, or spreader as it's colloquially known around these parts, Probotector, as with Contra, is a much easier 4 out of 10. You might bite down on your controller if you lose it, but once you get it back, it's relatively smooth sailing once again. Without it, the difficulty ratchets up to a much more difficult 8 out of 10, and it might have you writing a threatening letter to Konami, or in the case of Probotector, maybe even reaching out to your local German indexing assessor. What do I mean by that? Well, we'll expound on that on the other side of the intro, so let's run it and get into this kinda sorta Probotector walkthrough right here on Video Games 101. As we begin a new game, let's take a quick look at the controls for Probotector. Hopefully you'll forgive our crude attempt at our very own sprite swap. You might not be able to tell, but this is based on the same graphic we used for the controls in our Contra class. But yes, a sprite swap in video game terms simply means that the visuals have been changed to varying degrees, but it's the same exact gameplay experience between the two games otherwise. With that in mind, once again forgive the repurposed Contra Briggs notes for this Probotector class, but of course the same rules also apply to staying alive in this game as well. Keep that spreader/spread gun and never stop shooting, and also scroll the enemies out in a few choice spots to make this game much more manageable. Apparently we did that Contra class so long ago that we were putting spaces between the Briggs notes, or maybe that's just something we were trying and obviously gave up on. Not sure what that's about, but aside from that, we're going to dispense with the normal conventions of our classes today and forego appearances from 2 of our TAs in Blaze and Gary. For a more in-depth and actual walkthrough with our normal item and boss guides from Blaze and Gary respectively, check out our class on Contra, link in the description. But basically our next proper class, which we are putting up in a few days and may well be out by the time you see this, is on Contra 3 The Alien Wars for the SNES. So I thought it would be fun to play a game we referenced during our class on that game's predecessor, Super C, here in this game, Probotector. You know, it's the last days of summer, and as we're gearing up for our annual block of classes on scary games next month, and a number of other classes, I thought a more laid-back class was in order for a change, and I thought this would be a great excuse to get some more context on the reasoning behind the sprite swap, the story, and the name change here in Probotector. And now, here to clue us in is the cat I confounded in revealing this game's strange European title during our class on Super C, our resident fact finder, Fluff. Hey, Fluff.
Hey, Professor. Yeah, I'm not ashamed to admit that was one of my more frustrated moments of the many classes we've held over the years. But as I said in that class, I just hate bad branding. And that was actually before I even heard the name Probotector.
No, I can't fault you. Acknowledging it's what the European members of our class grew up with, for those of us who grew up in the US, Contra is all we knew growing up, and I also maintain it's still a tremendously superior title, Contra that is, than Probotector, and even Greiser, as that game is known in the arcades in Europe.
Still sounds like nails on a chalkboard.
Yeah, sorry. So before we get into the change, I should probably ask, just so we can meet at least the bare minimum of this qualifying as a class, does the famous Konami code of 30 lives still work here in Probotector?
Yep, just like in Contra, the famous Konami code of up, up, down, down, left, right, BA start on the title screen will allow you to begin with 30 lives at the start of this one as well.
Fantastic, alright. Well, I'm assuming they didn't just swap out the visuals on the main characters and enemies and call it a day. I mean, there's a different story, such as it is in this game as well, yeah?
That's right. To quote the manual, it's the year 2633 AD. Technology has reached a level so advanced that nature and science now exist in harmony and peace reigns throughout the world. But beneath the calmness, something beyond all imagination is discovered that threatens the existence of mankind. While conducting top-secret research, a special task force of scientists find that an alien being from the galaxy of Apocalypse is plotting to wipe out the human race. In order to protect the Earth and its people, 2 combat robots, Probotector, RD-008 and RC-011, have been developed. Their mission is to go to the aliens' fortress in the Galga Islands and see that they are exterminated. I should point out that the setting of the Galga Islands was changed by a single letter from the setting of the Galuga Island and jungles, where the original and many of the subsequent games take place. Either way, this fictional island or chain of islands pretty much universally meant to exist off of New Zealand in the Southwest Pacific.
Okay, we've identified the what is Probotector and confirming it's the European makeover of Contra that we all know and love, but with a robotic aesthetic for the characters and enemies. Now, if you don't mind, Fluff, tell us the why. Did the Europeans hate Arnold Schwarzenegger and or Sylvester Stallone that much? Or did they really just love robots that much?
So the decision to turn Bill Mad Dog Reiser and Lance Scorpion Bean, modeled after Arnie and Sly as he pointed out, not to mention the rest of the baddies in this game, into a bunch of robots, can be traced all the way back to 1949 in the aftermath of World War II. Germany was getting back on its feet in the wake of the war, and the powers that be decided they should maybe just do a better job overseeing the kind of media which the youth of their country had access to and were seeing. After initially proposing a kind of regulatory board for doing just that in 1949, the memorable and snappily named Federal Review Board for Works Harmful to Young Persons, a translation of something I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce, but can be abbreviated to BPJS, was established in Germany in 1954. NES games were admittedly less commonplace in the 1950s, so to give you an idea of the kinds of content the board was reviewing at the time, one of the first works identified and consequently indexed by the board was an Italian comic which translates to The Little Sheriff. The board citing its reasoning being that the comic featured, quote, crude language, graphic violence, and presentations of unjustified attacks against American Indians, unquote. The board's main responsibilities are listed as placing media harmful to young people which has been indexed to only be accessible to adults, as well as promoting value-oriented educational media and encouraged public awareness about media protection for young people.
A couple times you said works got indexed. I'm assuming that's a bad thing for the author, the publisher, whoever's responsible for or behind the work?
Yeah, so how it goes is someone nominates a work for being reviewed for indexing. The board then has a kind of hearing where they discuss it, and the representatives of the work can attend and advocate for it to be made available, without limitations. If they fail, then the work gets indexed or basically added to a list. Getting indexed was basically the death knell for any work, be it a novel, comic, film, game, etc., particularly those targeted at a younger audience, because this meant that the work in question couldn't be sold, provided, or otherwise made accessible to minors. It couldn't be displayed where it could be seen by minors, and it could only be sold within shops and areas accessible only to adults. I guess they kept them on the high shelf or something, but yeah, it's kind of crazy. It's illegal for third parties to even publish or otherwise publicly mention any lists of works which have been indexed, because in the board's mind that would work against their very intent and inadvertently bring attention and publicity to the very works they were trying to keep away from kids.
Wow, kind of like how Night Trap was one of the targets of that United States Senate committee hearing on violence in video games back in the early 90s. Just this kind of throwaway game, but it since has gone on to receive this kind of legendary cult status because of the attention which that brought to it.
That's true. We ought to do a class on that game one of these days, Professor. But anyway, as the decades progressed, the BPJS expanded the eligibility of those who could essentially nominate a work to be indexed, basically relaxing the requisites for indexing works, so there were a lot more groups who could act as watchdogs. I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge there was understandably a lot of criticism and backlash against the board's censorship-driven policies, regardless of their intent. It's also worth noting that Germany was unique in their comparatively greater reach in censoring media aimed at kids versus the rest of Europe, or better said, Western democracies. In fact, there were some games which received special German-specific ports to basically ensure that they couldn't be the targets of being indexed.
Well, then why is this the de facto European version of this game? Why isn't there just a Probotector for Germany while it's Contra or even Greiser? For the rest of Europe?
Aha, that one's easy. Guess where Nintendo of Europe's headquarters is located?
I want to say Germany.
And you'd be right, Frankfurt specifically. And after seeing the aforementioned arcade version of Contra, which will not be named, after that game was indexed in Germany in 1988, Nintendo of Europe decided to delay and give Contra a full-on sprite swap to skirt the guidelines, as violence against robots is chill in Germany. I'm paraphrasing, but that's really all it is. The board saw Contra as glorifying violence and war, which, no arguments there, I suppose, even if it's largely humans against aliens. If it's a bunch of robots getting up to these shenanigans, then it's all good. Spoiler alert, they even changed the admittedly military-looking helicopter that you escape in at the end of the game to a more futuristic jet. And we thought Nintendo of America's censorship policies were bad, Professor.
Kind of shows how frivolous the whole thing is.
It sure does. And just to kind of bring us all up to date, starting with 1996's Contra Legacy of War, which was released for the Sony PlayStation and Sega Saturn, Konami abandoned the Probotector name and released the game with minimal alterations, retaining the human characters as, I guess by then the board had altered their guidelines enough so that it wasn't an issue. The board has since reformed and changed their name to something else I won't try to pronounce, but yeah, this game is only so long.
Now, thank you very much, Fluff, for that very interesting context and history lesson in relatively early video game censorship. I guess I'm naive because I genuinely, when I first learned about this version, I just thought someone along the line with enough power to make it happen was really into robots. And I don't hate it. These visuals are kind of cool. It's a cool makeover. Unnecessary, but it looks good. And just surprised that that's the reasoning behind it. If anything, it just kind of blows my mind even harder now that Nintendo of America allowed Mad Dog to have that cigarette in his mouth on the title screen of Contra, even if they tried to explain it away as a toothpick or something. I know it was in the early days of their censorship policies, but still. But yeah, you got the slight variation on the Super Soldier right here. Still with that same color scheme, though, that makes me thirsty for a grape or orange soda, just like when I was a kid. Some things will never change, class, but on the penultimate stage here, as we start to treat this like a normal class, but I will say with the Contra 3 Alien Wars class, which we do have coming up in just a few days, as mentioned. Definitely recommend that you check that one out, by the way. Just the difficulty between these two games. Admittedly, I ran this game, or more specifically Contra, so many times as a kid, a lot more than I ran Contra 3, but I just think, nonetheless, Contra 3 is objectively much more difficult than this game, at least on the hardest difficulty. There will be plenty of time to talk about that once that class goes up, but yeah, it's the same concept as our recent class on Final Fight 2, where they save the best ending for the hardest difficulty, and the hardest difficulty much more difficult, unfortunately, than it was in Final Fight 2, so. But we'll talk about that. That's a whole thing, and thankfully we'll be rejoined by our complete staff of TAs once that class goes up. Blaze, Gary, and Fluff. We'll see what Fluff has to tell us about that game. Curious, class, what's your favorite title in the Contra series, or Probotector series, as the case may be? Whatever sprites the game is sporting. Where's your favorite title? Gotta be mindful of these last few turrets right here, whatever they look like, and a couple on this next level before the boss. And then, same tactic as pretty much the first boss. Bit easier, if anything, because you get right up on it and blast away to take it down before it actively becomes a threat. But already on to the final stage in the alien's lair. A couple deceptive jumps here in the lair. Be very careful. Grab yourself the bee, the barrier. And just, let's not even call it a spoiler, a teaser of the Contra 3 class, which we have coming up. It's nice that they bring a lot of the bosses back. Not just from this game, but from Super C as well. So you get the little kind of mini boss we just ran across. We'll have all the proper names once we get to that one. But the heart, good to clear these things out before we go too far and get inundated with their little alien wishies, as I like to call them. Yeah, a couple bosses from Super C making an appearance late in. This is the deceptive jump right here. Make sure you're at the very edge before you try that. Seems harder in Contra, actually. Now just got the babies to contend with. Last line of defense here. Let's just go ahead and neuter this thing. Just feels good. Working on our no-death run here. You can do it in Contra, you can certainly do it in Probotector, excuse me. It's not a good name, I maintain that. I don't think you got shortchanged in the visuals here, but I do think you got shortchanged with that name. Contra just infinitely cooler, even if it's not really a relevant term anymore. Just the series, you know, it just owned it. Basically adopted it as its own term, and this is what we all associate with Contra now. Just fantastic shoot 'em up games. Let's go to town on the heart, alien, robot, whatever it is in this version, and let's see that advanced kind of plane, the jet versus the helicopter here. There it is, as Fluff mentioned. Let's see if we have a variation on. Should we still consider ourselves a hero? This might be the same kind of outro. Yep, consider yourself a hero. Still the Red Falcon. I guess robots can consider themselves heroes. I don't want to take any. I mean, you start saying robots can't consider themselves heroes, and you're shortchanging Mega Man. He's just a bit more cute and cuddly than the the robots we had rocking here in Probotector. RD 0008 or something? I don't know. Just give me Mad Dog and the other guy. Mad Dog and Scorpion. Schwarzenegger and Stallone. But anyway, that's our time this week, class. Hopefully you didn't mind us changing up a little bit, just doing something a bit more low-key for this one. Just thought it'd be fun as a little kind of teaser ahead of our more conventional class in Contra 3 The Alien Wars. But big thanks to Fluff for hanging out with me for this one. And if you haven't already done so, please consider subscribing to enroll in these classes. Do one of these classes every single week in the same spot. Love to have you enrolled. Click that like button too if you don't mind. Really does help us out to make future classes for you. And leave a comment. Again, what is your favorite title in the Contra series, class? Maybe it is The Alien Wars. Either way, hope to see you for that one very soon, right here on Video Games 101. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and comment on this video, and click subscribe if you haven't already, as this seriously helps me to keep making great content for you. And check the description of this video to see what song is playing right now.